Have you ever wondered what happens when human greed collides with the power of nature? They came, driven by ambition. But this river is more than just water. It lives, it protects, and I will not let them take it.
The village, once a peaceful haven hidden deep within the ancient forest, is now shrouded in an air of mystery and unease. The village is not haunted by ghosts, but by the living legend of Ayana and Talia, the enigmatic twins whose fates are entwined with the sacred river. The tale of their extraordinary bond with the waters and the divine intervention of the river goddess has been passed down through generations, growing more haunting with each retelling. Though Ayana has merged with the river, her form now an eternal part of its rushing waters. And Talia has returned to the village, life here is far from serene. Ayana's transformation, though seen as an act of sacrifice and the will of the goddess, has left an intangible fear lingering over the villagers. They believe Ayana's spirit resides within the river, ever watchful, ever guarding. Every ripple, every breeze brushing across the water seems to carry her unseen presence, a constant reminder of the goddess's power and wrath. It is a fear that is difficult to name, yet impossible to deny. Whispered rumors, like the rustling of leaves, spread through the air, speaking of Ayana's eternal vigil and the goddess's ire. Those who once adored the twins now harbour a strange, conflicting sentiment, both reverence and wariness. They place offerings by the riverbank, not solely out of devotion, but to quell their unease, as if pleading for forgiveness from the goddess and Ayana's spirit. Talia, now the sole link between the village and the enigmatic river, bears the weight of this heavy legacy. With every step she takes through the village, she feels the cautious gazes of the villagers trailing her. She is not just Ayana's sister, but the bearer of a sacred duty to protect the holy river. Yet within her, as within the river, a growing unease stirs. The fragile peace of the village, maintained since Ayana's transformation, is on the brink of shattering. Something is approaching, something none in the village can foresee. But Talia senses the shift. And as night falls and the river begins to stir as if warning of what is to come, it becomes clear that this is only the beginning of a far greater trial, one that will test both the courage and faith of the village to their very limits. Under the glow of the full moon, the village lay in stillness, its outward serenity masking a growing tension among its people. Talia, the remaining sister of the twins, tossed and turned restlessly on her small wooden bed. That night's dreams were unlike any she had ever experienced before. Vivid, unsettling, and filled with an inexplicable urgency. In her dream, the river, usually calm and tranquil, was now chaotic. The waters swirled violently and the surface, once crystal clear, now reflected ominous shadows. From the midst of the churning waves, Ayana's figure emerged, her body glowing with an ethereal light. Ayana's face was both familiar and otherworldly, her expression a mix of love and concern. When she spoke, her voice echoed like ripples spreading across the water. "Talia!" Ayana called, her voice low but urgent. "The river is uneasy. Strangers will come, bringing danger. Protect our home." Those words lingered in the air like a tolling bell, each syllable heightening Talia's growing sense of dread. As Ayana's figure dissolved into the surging waves, the dream faded into darkness, leaving Talia gasping for breath as though she had surfaced from a great depth. She bolted upright, her heart pounding in her chest. The night air was cool, yet sweat drenched her brow. Talia's trembling hand brushed through her tangled hair as she glanced out the window. Outside, the moonlight bathed the village in a gentle silver glow, but her eyes were drawn to the distant river. Its surface shimmered faintly, as if alive, as if it too was uneasy. Talia shivered. Something was coming, something she couldn't yet comprehend, but her instincts told her it would change everything. The next morning, Talia couldn't shake the lingering unease that had settled over her. She wandered through the village distractedly, her mind replaying Ayana's warning. The words echoed in her head like a haunting refrain. Strangers will come, bringing danger. Talia found herself by the riverbank, where the familiar sound of flowing water offered a fragile sense of comfort. She knelt by the edge, gazing at her reflection in the rippling current. The river had always been her refuge, a symbol of Ayana's presence, but now it no longer brought solace, only vigilance, as though it too awaited something unknown. "What do you mean, Ayana?" Talia whispered, her voice nearly swallowed by the babbling water. "What is coming?" The river gave no reply, continuing its unceasing flow, yet Talia felt its energy shift, as if it too was bracing for something inevitable. Life in the village carried on as usual, but Talia couldn't ignore the subtle changes. Birds that used to sing every morning were now quieter, their songs muffled. The villagers went about their daily routines, but beneath the surface lay a simmering unease, an unspoken fear. When Talia confided in a few close companions about her dream, their responses were a mix of concern and skepticism. "It's just a nightmare, Talia," one of them said, trying to reassure her. "Nothing more." But Talia knew this was more than a mere dream. Ayana's voice had been too clear, too urgent. It wasn't an illusion. It was a warning. 3 days later, the tension in the village reached its peak. A low rumble echoed from deep within the forest, and soon they appeared. A caravan with large wooden wagons, their wheels kicking up clouds of dust as they rolled into the village square. Strangers. There were 6 of them, dressed in fine clothes that starkly contrasted with the villagers' simplicity. Leading the group was a man named Malachi. Malachi exuded an air of authority. Tall and confident, his piercing eyes seemed to see through everything. His deep, resonant voice carried an intentional weight as he introduced himself to the village elder. "We are but humble merchants," he said, his tone warm but calculated. "We seek rare treasures and resources from this sacred land." Talia stood on the edge of the crowd, her heart heavy as she observed Malachi. There was something off about him. His gaze lingered too long on the river, and a smug, fleeting smile played on his lips. When his eyes met hers, a cold chill ran down her spine. "This river," Malachi said, gesturing toward the water, "is unlike any I've ever seen. It seems to have a life of its own. Perhaps it should be shared with the world." The elder's face darkened. "This river is sacred," he replied firmly. "It is not for trade." Malachi raised his hands as if in surrender, his smile unwavering. "Of course," he said smoothly. "We mean no harm." But Talia didn't trust him. She saw the greed in his eyes, the way he appraised the river as if it were a possession to be claimed. That night, as the villagers cautiously extended their hospitality to the strangers, Talia kept watch by the river. The moonlight danced on its surface, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw Ayana's face in the ripples. The vision vanished as quickly as it came, but it steeled her resolve. She would protect the river, no matter the cost. The small village nestled along the shimmering river, where Georgia's rolling hills created a picturesque backdrop, had always been serene and secluded. Life here unfolded slowly, filled with familiar faces and the comforting rhythms of a close-knit community. But the tranquility that had enveloped the village for generations was shattered one bright, sunny morning. A low rumble echoed across the square, a sound foreign to the quiet countryside. The villagers paused, narrowing their eyes toward the winding road that led to the village's centre. From around the bends appeared a caravan, gleaming SUVs at the front, followed by old wooden carts laden with covered cargo. This procession carried an air of authority and wealth, a stark contrast to the village's simplicity. The villagers cautiously stepped back, gathering in small clusters to observe. The caravan halted in the middle of the square and the doors of the vehicles swung open in unison. A man stepped out from the lead SUV, tall and imposing, dressed in refined yet rugged attire. His presence immediately commanded attention. He introduced himself as Malachi. With a deep, resonant voice, he strode to the center, nodding as if he had known the villagers for years. His sharp gaze swept over the village, pausing on the shimmering river winding between the rocky banks. A faint smile crossed his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes, leaving an impression that was both friendly and unsettling. "Greetings," Malachi began, his words carefully chosen, just warm enough to appear welcoming but tinged with control. "I am Malachi, and my companions and I are but humble merchants. We seek rare treasures, unique marvels that I believe only this extraordinary land can provide." His words, sweet as honey, quickly stirred a mix of curiosity and unease among the villagers. They murmured among themselves, their eyes darting between the unfamiliar vehicles and the imposing man before them. Talia stood at the edge of the square, her gaze fixed on Malachi. There was something about him that unsettled her, a feeling she couldn't quite explain, but couldn't ignore. Malachi's gaze swept across the crowd, finally settling on Talia. When their eyes met, a chill ran down her spine, his smile deepened, heightening her wariness. After skillfully capturing the villagers' attention, Malachi turned to address the village elder. With polished manners and a compelling voice, he seemed to dissolve their initial doubts with ease. Yet even as he spoke, his eyes kept darting back to the river, betraying an unusual fascination. "This river," Malachi said, gesturing toward the sunlit waters, "is unlike any I have ever seen. It is more than just water. It holds a vibrant energy, a unique vitality. Perhaps it should be shared with others, so that many may enjoy its beauty and benefits." The elder's expression darkened immediately. He looked at Malachi with a wary intensity. "This river is sacred," he replied firmly. "It is not something to be traded." Malachi smiled, but the warmth had vanished. His grin now carried a cold, enigmatic edge. "Of course," he said evenly, his voice calm and measured. "We mean no harm." From a distance, Talia watched Malachi's every move, scrutinizing his words and gestures. Her instincts screamed that he could not be trusted. She could feel his gaze appraising the river, viewing it as a valuable resource waiting to be exploited. Clenching her fists, Talia resolved to protect the river that Ayana still watched over. That night, as the village fell into a deep sleep, Talia stood alone by the river. The gentle sound of flowing water, usually so comforting, now seemed tinged with unease, as though the river itself sensed the stranger's presence. The moonlight illuminated the banks, and for a fleeting moment, Talia thought she saw Ayana's reflection in the rippling surface. "You're still watching, aren't you, Ayana?" Talia whispered. "Help me protect this place." The river offered no reply, only a soft breeze rippling across the water, like a silent reassurance. Standing there in the quiet of the night, Talia knew a storm was brewing, not in the skies, but in the hearts of those who sought to claim the sacred river, and she would not let them destroy everything. The village had long been a place of peace where the gentle flow of the river mirrored the simple, harmonious rhythm of its people's lives. But that peace was fragile, and on one fateful morning, it was utterly shattered. The first rays of sunlight revealed a troubling scene. The riverbank, once pristine and serene, was now trampled with deep footprints and littered with abandoned tools. The ground, usually soft with morning dew, had turned into a chaotic mess of thick, churned mud. Evidence of destruction was everywhere, shallow trenches as though someone had tried to redirect the river's flow, and deep wheel ruts stretching toward the forest. When Talia arrived, her heart clenched. Her sharp eyes quickly took in the signs: a tipped-over metal bucket, frayed ropes scattered around, and the deep impressions of wagon wheels in the earth. Her hands curled into tight fists as anger surged within her. This was not just an intrusion upon the river. It was an insult to Ayana's legacy. News of the violation spread like wildfire. Villagers gathered quickly by the riverbank, their faces etched with worry. To them, the Savannah River was more than a source of water. It was their lifeblood, their history, a sacred bond between them and the land. "The strangers!" an elderly man cried out, his voice trembling with fury. "They've come to steal what is ours." "They dare defile the sacred river!" another woman exclaimed, her tone a mix of disbelief and rage. The murmurs of the crowd quickly grew into a cacophony, fear and anger mingling in the air. Talia stepped forward, her voice cutting through the clamour like a blade. "We cannot let this continue," she declared, her tone firm and resolute. "Ayana sacrificed everything to protect this river. It is our duty to keep it safe." Her words ignited a fire within the villagers. Nods of agreement spread through the crowd, though hints of unease remained. The strangers were not only well-equipped, but seemed unshaken by the warnings of the river's sacredness. For the first time, the villagers felt the weight of their vulnerability. That evening, as the golden hues of sunset reflected off the river's surface, Talia walked along its edge. Her thoughts swirled like the currents beneath her feet. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that Malachi and his men were plotting something far more dangerous. The wind began to pick up, rustling the willow trees lining the riverbank. Talia stopped, her gaze fixed on the water. For a brief moment she thought she saw a faint glimmer beneath the surface, a sign of Ayana's presence. "If you're still here, Ayana," Talia whispered, her voice soft and merging with the sound of the flowing water, "show me how to protect this river." The river did not respond, but a gentle breeze brushed past her, like a silent encouragement. Standing there in the quiet of the night, Talia felt it clearly. A storm was coming. Not a storm of the skies, but a battle between those driven by greed and those determined to protect everything they held dear. A heavy stillness hung in the air as the pale moonlight bathed the Savannah River, casting an eerie glow over the quiet village that seemed to hold its breath. Talia stood at the edge of the forest, her heart pounding as her eyes locked onto a shadowy figure by the riverbank. Malachi. His tall frame stood clearly against the shimmering water, his posture calm, yet emanating a dangerous energy. He was alone, his gaze transfixed, as though mesmerized by the secrets of the river. Talia took a deep breath, summoning her courage, and stepped forward, her feet leaving faint impressions in the soft earth. She stopped just a few paces away from him, her voice breaking the silence of the night. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her tone low but laced with anger. Malachi turned, his expression unreadable. The moonlight danced in his eyes, and for a fleeting moment they glimmered with something darker than a mere curiosity, an obsession, or perhaps the cold calculation of someone who believed they held all the power. "Ah, Talia," he said smoothly, his voice as velvety as ever. "Out for a midnight stroll as well?" "Don't pretend," Talia cut in sharply, narrowing her eyes. "Why are you here?" A slow smile spread across Malachi's face, sending a chill down Talia's spine. "This river," he said, gesturing toward the gentle ripples, "is more than just a river. It's a treasure, a source of power unlike anything I've ever encountered. Surely you understand. Something extraordinary like this cannot remain hidden forever." Talia stepped closer, her fists clenched tightly at her sides. "This river is not yours," she said, her voice trembling with barely restrained fury. "It belongs to Ayana. It belongs to this village. You have no claim here." A tense silence stretched between them, broken only by the soft sound of the water lapping against the shore. Then Malachi chuckled, a quiet, mocking sound that sent a chill through Talia's veins. "You're naive, Talia," he said, his tone almost pitying. "Do you think the world will leave this place untouched? You can't stop progress, no matter how tightly you cling to your quaint little traditions. This river has potential, real potential, and I intend to harness it." Talia's heart raced, but she held her ground. She took another step forward, planting herself firmly between Malachi and the river. "This isn't progress," she shot back, her voice rising, clear and unwavering. "This is greed. You don't care about the river or the people who depend on it. You just want to take everything, without any regard for the consequences." Malachi's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating stare. "Perhaps," he murmured, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "but I always get what I want." With that, Malachi turned his back on her, his eyes once again fixed on the river. It was as though he dismissed her entirely, as if her words held no weight. That indifference ignited a fire within Talia, a determination that could not be extinguished. She knew she couldn't let Malachi carry out his plans, and no matter the cost, she would protect the sacred river. The days that followed felt like a nightmare for Talia. Malachi, with his deep, soothing voice and charming smile, began to reveal his true nature. He no longer pretended to be a humble merchant. Instead, he subtly lured the village's young men, weaving promises filled with temptation. "Just help me," Malachi whispered to a group of young men gathered in a corner of the village. "You'll have everything: money, power, and a life you've never dreamed of. This river is the key, and you will be the ones to unlock its potential." Those honeyed words began to seep into the minds of the young, planting seeds of curiosity and ambition. Some started to waver. They began to wonder, could Malachi's promises be real? Perhaps this was their chance to escape the monotony of village life. Talia, who had known every soul in the village since childhood, felt a deep pain as she witnessed the growing division. Friends, neighbours and companions now looked at one another with suspicion. Some believed Malachi's words, dreaming of a prosperous future. Others remained loyal to Talia, trusting that she alone understood the sacred value of the river. Talia couldn't stand idly by. One afternoon, she stepped into the village square where the people had gathered and spoke with heartfelt urgency. "Don't you see?" she said, her eyes meeting each villager's gaze. "He doesn't care about us, the river, or this village. All Malachi wants is to steal what's most precious to us, leaving us with nothing but ruin and regret." Her words echoed through the air, but not everyone was convinced. A young man, someone Talia had played with as a child, stood up and said, "But Talia, what if he's right? What if the river really could bring us a better life? This village has been poor for so long. We can't live in this dull existence forever." Those words hit Talia like a punch to the heart. She realized that greed and dreams of a brighter future, combined with Malachi's cunning, were tearing apart the people who had once been like family. While some remained steadfast by Talia's side, others began to question her. They looked at her with doubt, wondering if she was standing in the way of the opportunity their village had waited for all these years. Talia felt the weight of Ayana's legacy heavier than ever on her shoulders. The river was not just a source of water, it was the embodiment of everything the village held dear: life, history, and soul. But now, it had become the focal point of division. Every night, Talia sat by the riverbank, staring at the shimmering ripples under the moonlight. She prayed silently, hoping Ayana would guide her in saving the village. "Sister Ayana," Talia whispered, her voice breaking, "I don't know what to do. Help me protect this river, protect what we love." While Talia struggled to keep her faith, Malachi pressed forward with his plan. Gradually, his followers began to act. One night, as the village slept, a group of young men sneaked to the riverbank. Under Malachi's orders, they brought strange tools, small pumps, large buckets, and other devices the villagers had never seen before. The days that followed felt like a nightmare for Talia. Malachi, with his deep, soothing voice and charming smile, began to reveal his true nature. He no longer pretended to be a humble merchant. Instead, he subtly lured the village's young men, weaving promises filled with temptation. Talia stood before the elder's house, her legs heavy with the weight of responsibility. The flickering glow of oil lamps cast faint shadows in the night as she stepped inside. The elder, an aged man with sharp yet calm eyes, sat at his table, listening intently to the sounds outside the door. "You've come because of the river, haven't you?" he asked, his voice low but full of understanding. Talia nodded, her face etched with worry. "I need your counsel," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Malachi doesn't just threaten the river. He threatens the future of our village. I can't do this alone." The two sat together, speaking in hushed tones for hours. The elder, who had seen many trials in his lifetime, offered wise and pointed advice. "To defeat a powerful enemy," he said, his eyes serious, We need more than strength. We need unity. Talia nodded, her hands tightening as she absorbed his words. They decided the only way to face Malachi and his followers was to rally the entire village. Talia was tasked with persuading those still hesitant, while the elder organized the others to prepare traps and defenses along the riverbank. In the days that followed, the village became a hive of activity. Men and women worked tirelessly, erecting barricades of bamboo and stone along the river. They dug pits, strung ropes, and carefully camouflaged traps. Young men who had once wavered under Malachi's promises returned, realizing they could not side with someone who had violated the sacred river. "We are not just protecting the river," Talia said as she addressed the crowd, her eyes shining with determination. "We are protecting our families, our home, and our future. This is Ayana's legacy, but it is also our hope." As the fateful day approached, tension gripped the village. Under the pale moonlight, Talia walked the riverbank, inspecting each trap. The hum of insects filled the still night, but within her was a strange calm. She stopped by the river, where the moonlight danced on the water's surface. For a fleeting moment, she thought she saw Ayana's figure shimmer within the ripples. "Sister Ayana," she whispered, her voice nearly breaking. "Stay with me. Help us protect this place." The river didn't respond, but a gentle breeze passed over it, like a silent message of encouragement. Talia took a deep breath, knowing the coming battle would determine everything. That night, a violent storm descended. Thunder rumbled across the sky, a warning from nature itself. Lightning split the darkness, illuminating the Savannah River as it churned wildly under the torrential rain. But the fury of the storm did little to deter Malachi. He and his men, armed with modern tools and large storage barrels, pressed on toward the river. His face glowed with determination and ambition, as though nothing could stand in his way. "Tonight, this river will be ours," Malachi declared, his voice cutting through the downpour. "No legend, no fear can stop me." In the shadows, Talia and the villagers stood ready. Traps had been set along the riverbank, barricades erected to protect the sacred land. Talia stood by the river, her eyes blazing despite the weariness etched into her body from days of preparation. "When we stand united, we can never be defeated," she had told the villagers earlier, her voice brimming with passion. "Ayana is here, watching over us, but we must also rise to protect this river ourselves." The villagers, young and old, stood resolute. All doubts had vanished. Their hearts beat as one, determined to defend their home and their heritage. As Malachi's men began placing their equipment in the water, Talia gave the signal. A piercing shout tore through the stormy night. "Stop!" The villagers surged from the trees, torches blazing brightly even under the relentless rain. Their flickering light illuminated determined faces and hands gripping crude but firm weapons. Malachi flinched but quickly regained his composure. A cold smile spread across his face as he stepped forward. "Do you really think you can stop me?" he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "This river does not belong to you," Talia shouted back, her voice strong and unyielding against the howling wind. "It belongs to Ayana, to this village, and we will not let you take it." Malachi smirked and signaled his men to continue. But then, something extraordinary happened. The river, already swift with the storm, suddenly erupted with violent force. The waters churned into massive whirlpools, sweeping away Malachi's tools as though they were mere playthings. The wind howled around the banks, carrying with it a sound like whispers of ancient power. Malachi's men stumbled and fell, struggling to keep their footing on the rain-slicked ground. And then, amidst the chaos, Ayana's figure emerged from the river. Her face was clearer than ever, her eyes blazing with fury and authority. "This is your final warning," her voice echoed, powerful as the thunder in the sky. "Leave now, or face the wrath of the river." Malachi's men froze, paralyzed by fear. The sight of Ayana, a spirit bound to the river, surpassed anything they could have imagined. For the first time, Malachi faltered. His gaze shifted between Ayana's spectral form and the raging river. The confidence that had carried him through every challenge wavered. Yet even as he realized he could not win, he masked his defeat with a bitter sneer. "We retreat," he ordered, his voice tight with barely restrained anger. His men scrambled to gather their things, fleeing into the shadows, leaving their tools and barrels abandoned along the shore. As Malachi and his followers disappeared, the villagers erupted into cheers, their voices drowning out even the rain. They embraced one another, tears mingling with triumphant smiles. Talia remained by the river, her gaze fixed on the water. Ayana's image slowly faded, but the river shimmered with a quiet, luminous glow, as if offering a silent thanks. Talia closed her eyes, feeling her sister's presence. "Thank you, Ayana," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "We did it." The villagers gathered around Talia, their cheers transforming into heartfelt praise. They knew it wasn't just Ayana's protection, but also Talia's courage and leadership that had saved the river. As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight bathed the Savannah River, bringing with them a renewed sense of hope. The river was no longer just a source of water, it was now a symbol of strength, unity, and love for their home. Talia turned to the villagers and spoke. "This victory isn't just mine, it's ours. We've proven that when we stand together, nothing can defeat us." The villagers responded with a resounding cheer, their hearts swelling with pride and gratitude. From that day on, the Savannah River was not merely a place, but a story, a legacy passed down through generations, reminding all that courage and love can triumph over any challenge. As the first rays of sunlight touched the Savannah River, the echoes of the previous night's battle still lingered over the small village. The signs of chaos were etched across the riverbank. Shattered barrels, abandoned tools and muddy ground crisscrossed with footprints. Yet the most important thing remained. The river still flowed peacefully, a testament to the villagers' resilience and the enduring spirit of Ayana. Talia stood by the river, her eyes fixed on the glistening waters. Her heart swelled with gratitude and pride, though a pang of sadness lingered as she thought of her sister. "Thank you, Ayana," she whispered, her voice as soft as the breeze. "Without you, we couldn't have done it." The water sparkled under the sunlight, the shimmering rays seeming to answer Talia's words. A gentle wind rustled the willow branches along the shore, a silent promise that Ayana would always be there. In the days following the battle, the village began to heal. Broken barricades were rebuilt, traps were dismantled, and both physical and emotional wounds gradually mended. The villagers, from the eldest to the youngest, worked side by side with a newfound unity. They rebuilt not just their home, but also the bonds that had been frayed by division. Those who had doubted Talia now approached her, their eyes filled with remorse. A young woman, once swayed by Malachi's promises, stepped forward, her hands trembling as she reached for Talia's. "Talia," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I'm sorry. I was wrong to doubt you. Without you, we would have lost everything." Talia smiled gently, her eyes reflecting forgiveness. "We all make mistakes," she replied. "What matters is that we learn from them and rebuild together." Talia's words spread quickly, rekindling hope throughout the village. The people began to see her not just as a leader, but as a symbol of courage and steadfastness. The story of Ayana and Talia became a living legend in the village. Children sat around their elders, listening intently to tales of the sisters and how they defended the river from greed. Ayana, though now part of the river, was remembered with deep reverence. "This river belongs to Ayana," an old man said one day, pointing to the glistening waters. "But it also belongs to all of us. We must protect it, not just for Ayana, but for ourselves." Those words became a guiding principle for the new generation, a reminder of the power of unity and the importance of preserving their heritage. Talia was no longer the anxious young woman she once was. She had grown into a steadfast leader. She frequently organized gatherings to remind the villagers of the lessons learned from their struggle. At one such meeting, she stood by the river, her gaze steady as she addressed the crowd. "This river is more than a source of water," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "It is a symbol of love, resilience, and sacrifice. Ayana has shown us that when we stand together, nothing is impossible." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But we cannot rely on miracles alone. We must stand on our own. Protect this river as Ayana once protected us." The villagers nodded in agreement, their eyes shining with determination. They knew the river was not just a relic of the past, it was their future. If this story has touched you, join us in spreading its message of family, unity, and the power of belief. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay inspired by more tales from around the world. What do you think of Talia's actions? What would you have done in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't hesitate to share this story with friends and family. Let us all protect what is sacred and cherished, for sometimes small things like a river carry the greatest lessons for all of us. As the storms passed and the sky cleared, the Savannah River continued to flow, carrying not just water but memories and promises. Ayana, though part of the river now, still watched over her sister and the village she had fought to protect. Talia, standing by the river with her hair glinting in the sunlight, smiled as she thought of the future. She knew her journey wasn't over, but she also knew she wasn't alone. With Ayana beside her and the villagers' support, she believed they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. And like the river, the story of Ayana and Talia would flow endlessly, a source of inspiration for all who listened.